Parents of Reddit, when has lying to your kids come back to bite you in the butt? When the quarry catfish at home died, I told my daughter I'd taken it to work. She knows critters die. I just didn't want her to become fixated on it. She visited my office 2 weeks later and demanded to know why the quarry wasn't there. Made a joke to my 2.5-year-old son about locking the car door so bears don't get in. He's 3 now and every time he's in the car he locks the door and says bears. Well, at least the bears won't get in. I was the kid, but I overheard some teens talking about BJs. So I asked my mom what BJs are. She said they're special kisses. Guess who loudly asked for a BJ from her auntie at the next family party? I like to play music in the kitchen when I cook. My kids, of course, don't share my taste in music, and my son would just walk up and turn it off. Once, years ago, when my kids were 4 and 2, I had a friend over and we were in the kitchen with music playing. My son came in and turned it off, and my friend told him that there were trolls in the basement, and the music put them to sleep, and he turned it off they would wake up. Since they were already scared of dark places, including the basement, the kids took this as gospel. For the next 3 or 4 years, I had to have music playing in the kitchen at all times, 24/7, or the kids would freak out and start crying about the trolls. At one point I tried to take them to the basement to show them there were no trolls. Let's just say that went tragically. Did the crappy thing of introducing cell phones to my 3-year-old son. Now, he is addicted to it. So, to get him away from it I always tell him it's dead or broken. Now, I can't get on Reddit as often. Say it's broken and you're trying to fix it when you're on it. It'll probably bite you in the butt anyways, but it worked for me when I wanted to play a game without the kid I used to live with taking it over. I always used to get out of bed in the middle of the night to go sleep in my parents' bed instead. One time my dad told me the boogeyman was coming to get me if I kept getting out of bed all night. This just led me to never going to bed and scream crying when they tried to make me. Well, you kept your parents from screaming at least. My son asked myself and my husband why we were showering together and I quickly told him to save water. When they were talking about recycling at school, the teacher asked what their family did to help the planet. He told his teacher his parents shower together to conserve water. This was actually something my mom did. When I was little, I hated going to bed. I would get up and wander around my house instead of trying to fall asleep. One night my mom told me, out of sheer desperation, that there was a monster who lived under my bed, and if I got out of bed, he would eat me. That night I really had to use the bathroom, but I was scared of the monster eating me, so instead of risking a monster attack, I wet the bed. How the frick do you sleep believing there's a monster under you? Parents told me when they found a dildo of mine that sex toys were a bad thing and shouldn't be used because it takes away the intimacy of sex with a partner, then made me throw them away. I found handcuffs, a rabbit vibrator, and a fleshlight knockoff in their drawers last week. Never will I ever be able to have them lecture me without laughing. I was the kid in this situation. Parents tried to make it seem like going to a restaurant is much more expensive than it actually was. My mom tried to convince me that tips was 100% of the bill rather than 10% to show how expensive it was. Oh Josh, you have to pay the same amount in tips, so you really pay double and all that BS. So when my parents let me pay the restaurant bill for the first time on their credit card when I was 9 years old, I put the tip as 100% of the bill. I think my parents remembered their lie midway as they rushed towards the front desk to ask me how much I tipped them. It was too late. Haha, that's hilarious. What a weird lie to tell. As well, you don't have to justify eating out being expensive. It just is. My daughter didn't talk to us for a week after she found out Santa wasn't real. She's also mute, so she hasn't talked to us in 23 years. Why would you lie and tell her he isn't real? I told my daughter the tooth fairy would give her money for her tooth that night. Then I went to bed and forgot to put money under her pillow. The next day when my daughter asked why the tooth fairy didn't visit, I had to think quickly and said she was on leave and would be back soon. When this happened to me, I helped my kid look better. We found it had fallen under the bed. letting my kid grow up thinking his mother was a decent lady. Once the kid found out what she did when we split up, the mom got disowned. I definitely get this. I grew up terrified of my dad when my mom had custody because of all the terrible things she said about him. Fast forward a few years and it turns out she's a sociopath and he's actually a really stand-up guy who spent most of my life trying to build a relationship with me. Not me, but I saw here one time that somebody told their kids that when the ice cream truck is playing music that it means they're out of ice cream. I could see that backfiring if their kids saw other kids buying ice cream from it. I told my kids it was the music truck. Worked like a charm for 4-5 years until a neighbor with kids moved in. One day my daughter runs in. Dad, the music truck has ice cream. No way. That's great. Here's $1. Go get some. That there is called a distraction. Nothing was ever mentioned of the 4 years of lies. Obligatory not a parent. As a kid, when me and my dad went shopping for groceries, he always used to tell me, "Sorry midnight snipe, you can't have insert stupid stuff kids want here because mommy took all my money." Now this worked at the start, but then I suddenly realized, how is daddy going to pay for these groceries if mommy took all his money? So, I asked him, in front of the cashier, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. He still is embarrassed to this very day, telling me the story of that one time I made a complete fool out of him without knowing. Okay, mommy didn't literally take all the money, but she took so much that we can't afford both groceries and kid stuff. Now we can live without kid stuff, but if we don't get groceries then we won't be able to eat, and then we will slowly starve to death. So to make a long story short, if we get the kid stuff, we will die. Told our girl to check if the door was closed before going to bed. When we left her alone at home, because of robbers, she ended up so scared that we couldn't leave her alone at home anymore. My sister was probably 4 or 5 at the time. My dad and I told her that a cat was really called a duck. We even named the family cat Duck. When she was enrolled in kindergarten, she was tested. They showed her a picture of a cat and asked her what it was. She said a duck. My parents got called in because originally they suspected my sister may be a little slow. My dad had to confess that he taught her that. My stepmother was so pissed until she found out that I was involved. The famous cat test. My parents lied and told me that they didn't have any information that would help locate my biological parents. I found all the adoption paperwork in my mom's dresser drawer. They had hospital records with my biological parents' social security numbers in them. Because of this, constant gaslighting, and other abuse, I'm no longer in contact with them. We told our daughter, 4, that she can't go to the bathroom alone or someone would take her. Well, she experimented with that and then came tell us. I went to the bathroom alone and no one came up to me and said come with me. So now she believes that she can just go wherever she pleases without supervision. This is on you guys, lol. Good job losing her trust. I lived in an area that had a lot of large propane tanks in yards, I guess to power stoves, and I kept climbing on them. My grandma told me if I kept touching them they'd explode. I had nightmares of the tanks exploding and killing everyone in the neighborhood. A few years later I saw How It's Made episode on the tanks and realized they weren't likely to explode from being touched. WTF grandma. It is just Vietnam getting to her. We have a farm and pet turkeys. We also have a we don't eat our friends rule. Applies more to the cats and dogs than us. My son was horrified at Thanksgiving when he was about 3 that it was a turkey, so I told him it was just a big chicken. I'm sure now that he's in school that will bite me in the butt. Congratulations, you have raised a future member of PETA. My cousin used to believe that his dad, my uncle, was a former Los Angeles Dodgers pitcher. That is what my uncle used to tell him anyway. So the story goes my cousin in the 6th grade has a friend over and my cousin Tony would also always tell his friend that his dad was a pitcher for the Dodgers. His friend would never believe him and Tony insisted he was. His friend's dad also was some major baseball fanatic and knew anybody who was anybody and especially on the Dodgers. His friend's dad came to pick him up and told my cousin his dad was not and never was a pitcher. Tony supposedly cried to sleep and the next day the whole school knew Tony lied about his dad being a pitcher. However, it was his dad, my uncle, that did the lying. for my dad. Probably all the time he had to commit to driving me around to various stages of a speech contest nationals thing over the period of a week when I was around 10, all thanks to a speech I had penned on the subject of hamsters. Based on a bunch of bulls my dad told me when I asked him if he knew anything about hamsters. I got to third place. The entire thing was bulls, and I only learned the truth 10 years later. My son got sick of Chinese food 4 years ago. I love Chinese, so I tell him it's Mexican food when we get it. His grandpa got into an argument with him because he was calling Chinese food Mexican food. I had to come clean and now he won't eat Chinese or Mexican. When I was a kid my parents told me the tooth fairy turned teeth into money, completely denying that they were the ones taking the tooth and putting money under the pillow. Being the stubborn curious kid I am, I decided to sleep with the tooth in my hand. When my parents couldn't find the tooth under my pillow they assumed it had fallen under the bed. Lost. The next morning I came down the stairs boasting about how I had the tooth and the money and had proved the tooth fairy didn't exist and that in fact they had put the money there. I was super happy with myself until they said, well, then I guess you won't be getting any more money when you lose a tooth. Kind of the opposite of what you asked, but I figure it's a good story and kind of relevant. I did basically the exact opposite. Parents probably thought I was retarded, but I wasn't the dumbass trading $5 for a tooth. My mom kept her birth control pills on a tall dresser in her bedroom. I remember finding them as a maybe 8 or 9 year old and asking what they were. My mom told me they were her headache pills and they kept her from having any more headaches. Now that I'm older, not sure that counts as a lie. This is adorable. Not a parent. They would make promises to do things with me, like get me out of school early for no reason or show up for Parents' Day or WE it was, but never did. They never had any real interest in what I liked or wanted to do, and never tried to like it. Likewise, I never wanted to spend time with them, because they did things I never liked. What I learned from them was that anything not done for your own interest was worthless. That has always stuck with me. I always wish they would play games with me, at least sometimes, or that I could show them the things I like. Even if you hate what your kids love, at least try and see the value in it that they do. Mine were the same way, and it taught me to find a way to do what I wanted on my own somehow. At 12 I got a job so I could learn to play guitar, a hobby I still enjoy today. My parents could not give less of a crap and actually told me it was a waste of money because I just quit anyway. We were at Disney World and told our daughter Cinderella was sick so we couldn't visit her. Daughter says in a hushed voice, with diarrhea. I said, yes. We were tired and out of fast passes to use. Now she talks about how Cinderella had diarrhea every time we talk about Disney or sees a pic of Cinderella. My mom always demanded that we remain abstinent until we were married, lest we end up in heck or prison. And we shouldn't have kids until we'd been married for more than 2 years. She'd always say we should follow her example, because she did it right and look how happy she is. Eventually I found out that she lied to us about her wedding date, and she had actually had a shotgun wedding because my dad got her pregnant after only knowing her for a month or so. Surprisingly, this wasn't even in the South. I also found out she is, and always has been, profoundly unhappy. As a mother I would assume that she doesn't want you to end up profoundly unhappy like she did. I got one, not a parent, but a riding coach. Little girl takes riding lessons from me for a few months. She's doing great. One day doesn't show up, no return phone calls. A few weeks later I run into her in the mall. Her parents are close but not close enough to stop this from happening. She stops me and says she's so sorry my horses died and I couldn't teach lessons anymore. I looked her parents in the face and told her my horses were just fine and she should ask her parents why they lied to her. Gave her parents a tight smile and walked off. People who lie to their kids in order to save face disgust me. That's a terrible thing to tell to a kid also. They might be sad for some time over the horse they used to ride dying. My mom told me you got pregnant by sleeping with a boy, which I guess isn't a complete lie, but imagine my horror when I was invited to my first co-sleepover. Not a parent, but I am an uncle. I had convinced my 5-year-old niece that I did not have a belly button. I would ache if this by pulling my pants up over my belly button. Eventually she caught on and would loudly exclaim with a smirk, "I know what's in your pants," whenever she remembered or whenever someone brought up belly buttons. Must be a nice jail to allow inmates to go on the internet. My 3.5 and 5-year-old made a leprechaun trap a few days after St. Patrick's Day. I tripped it on purpose and put chocolate coins in the backpack that they set up to catch it while they were out. Now they have an even more trap planned. Send help. I'm sorry to inform you that leprechauns are only in town the week of St. Patrick's Day, then they go back to Ireland. Good job on that one trap though. I've had a non-stop headache for a year now. A few months ago I told my 9-year-old daughter that my head was hurting so bad I thought it might explode. A few months later she told me she actually thought it would explode. You really should see a doctor. A non-stop headache is never normal. Daughter heard someone say B and I told her she can't AAY it because it's something adults refer to other adults as. Somehow, might have been sidetracked, but I never told her it was a bad word. She was in the principal for greeting her teacher "Hey B." As a kid, I liked dropping things down the heating grate to hear the clinking. My parents told me not to do that or the heater would overheat, like I was giving a fire fuel. One day I accidentally knocked a marble into the grate, so I thought the entire house would catch fire shortly after. So, while my parents were napping, I moved all of my toys and books out onto the front lawn, figuring if I couldn't stop the fire, I could at least save our stuff. They woke up when I started trying to move the furniture. I told my daughters they could open a lid because they did knock and say open. There were so many questions. I joked with my daughter naming all girls on pictures and TV as monkeys. I stopped it abruptly when she started do the same eye roll. I'm a foster parent and I am court ordered to lie to my kids right now that they're signed up for camp. I can't imagine it's going to end well. I don't think they're going to be mad at me, but they already don't trust anyone besides us. I had the patio door open and a big flying cockroach got in. 7-yo freaks out. I was almost sure I got it out but told her I was sure. Got her calmed down, then the roach came out of nowhere and crawled over her face. "You said you got it out. You lied." Double quote. My snooping butt went into my parents' closet and saw the same chocolate the next day in our Easter baskets. I was mad at them for a while until I figured out they were also Santa and the Tooth Fairy. Then I was super mad, but I got over it. I saw the packaging of the toys I would be getting for Christmas in the recycling bin. That's how I realized Santa was a sham. Not a parent, but my dad and I used to go to a laundromat. Next to the door was a button, which said push to open. I couldn't read though, and asked him what it said. He said, "Will explode if pressed," and warned me not to push it. I believed him and was deathly afraid of pressing it. Looking back, he probably just didn't want me playing around opening the door repeatedly. Years later I remembered, and realized what it was. WTF dad. One got one coming to bite me in the butt. My wife passed away when my son was 3. He couldn't comprehend where his mother went, and I was not all there for a while. One day, he brought it up. We were sitting outside, and he said, "Mommy is in space." I didn't correct him. I know when he gets older, it is going to be one difficult conversation. My mother always told me my uncle had died in a drowning accident in his late 20s whilst trying to retrieve his girlfriend's glasses that she had dropped in a lake. My mother's family always mentioned that I remind them of that uncle, but in like a wistful way, like they were glad I was around because I reminded them all of their brother who died tragically a little over a year ago. When we were all sitting around drinking, my mother and my older sister informed me that he had committed suicide. I'm 30 and for 5 or more years I've been hearing from my mother's entire family, including my grandmother, that I remind them of their brother son that killed himself when he was my age. Really don't know how to take that. They just miss him, and you probably share some physical traits or mannerisms he had. I wouldn't take it in a negative way. When I was still very young, my dad used to joke that my mom only made vanilla milk and he produced chocolate milk, but I couldn't have any of his. It actually happened last night to me. I'm the kid My maternal grandmother Nieves lived with us until she passed away. I was around 5 when she died, so I honestly don't remember much from back then. She died the summer before 9/11. My mother would talk about Nieves when I was a kid and say that she liked my dad, taking care of her, etc. Well, last night dad and I were talking about grandparents in general and I decided to mention how mom said that Nieves liked him. My dad tried to chuckle and said well. I was a little surprised and said oh what? Did mom lie to me about it? Dad bashfully admitted around that time he wasn't sober yet. He's been sober for over 10 years now, and that he doesn't blame Nieves for not liking him because he probably wasn't the most pleasant person to be around. He then said that she was a good person, and he imagined that she would be proud of the person he is today. I like to think so too. I'm not angry at my parents about it. Why should I be? Okay, so I'm not a parent, but my mom has always had a very strong policy on never lying to us, my brother, sister, and myself. I'm now almost 23 years old and I have spotted a few lies that my mother has told me, and as long as you're not being too dramatic with a white lie or being secretive in general, things should be fine. Don't be afraid to be honest with your kids, man. We're a lot better off for it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.